Right now, we can welcome in the new president of Monumental Basketball, Michael Winger, with us here. I'm Craig Hoffman. Typically, I host later in the day, Michael, but I've made a very special exception to join this man, Chris Russell, here, and welcome to D.C., man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Congratulations, obviously, and we're excited to have you here. As you know, you've got a monumental task here in trying to reshape, reload, refigure everything. What was, I know you've answered a million questions. What was the, outside of Ted, because you made that clear during the press conference, the thing that jumped out at you about Washington, D.C., the Washington Wizards, Monumental Sports, what was that for you?
It's a sleeping giant. I believe that wholeheartedly. I think the market is starved for hope. I've been with organizations that have rebooted, restarted, that provides hope, and sometimes you don't even have to do that. You just have to inject a little bit of foresight. You have to tell the fans, you have to tell the players what the expectations ought to be a year from now and 2 years from now and 3 years from now. And to the extent that there's alignment to pursue those expectations, I think everybody can get on board, and it just builds upon itself. Like it's not tangible, it's not visible. It just, one person says, hey, I like what they're doing. And then another person says, yeah, me too. And then 2 people becomes 4 people, 16, 32, and so on. And I think if we can just inject the market with a little bit of hope, it's going to pick up steam quickly, and that it's just going to compound upon itself. Players are going to feel it. The coaches are going to feel it. And then players elsewhere are going to say, hey, what's going on there in D.C.? Maybe I ought to take a look at that. And so I think, you mentioned it, in addition to Ted's vision and his passion and my belief in him, just being part of the group that can take a market sort of starving for hope and giving them that hope. It's a pretty inspiring opportunity.
You got emotional during the press conference talking about raising your kids here. I did. and you stopped so that you didn't get emotional, but now I'm going to ask you to continue. Why did that hit such a chord with you?
It was a combination of things. The first one is I just, quite frankly, never expected to be in this position. I just, whether it's growing up as a kid or going to high school or college, like you don't close your eyes and envision being invited by somebody like Ted to run his basketball organization. And so that's been like this underlying emotional trigger for me. And then believing that I'm going to be here for a long time, that our group is going to be together for a long time until they move on to bigger and better things. I envision my kids growing up and experiencing everything that DC has to offer, the people, the culture, the history. I've heard people say it, and in fact, I heard somebody say to me this morning that Washington, D.C. is the most important city in the world. And I thought of that. I was like, oh my gosh, like my kids are going to grow up in Washington, D.C. and they're going to be exposed to so much culture and diversity and history. And I know a lot of folks from the area, my closest friends and obviously my mentor from this area, and they're beautiful people. And if I can participate in raising kids that turn out like them, then man, something has gone really, really well.
It also has to be, we were clearly doing something right here, Chris, because I was reading some of the profiles on Michael this morning. You lived in Manhattan Beach. Why the hell did you leave Manhattan Beach?
Because the Monumental Sports.
Well, so let me jump in here. We're talking to the new president of Monumental Basketball, Michael Winger, with us here on the flagship station for the Washington Wizards, Team 980. I've known you for 4 minutes now. I don't really know you. You're sitting across from me. I can see why you impress the bleep out of everyone. I can see the genuine emotion. I can see the person. I think that you are. I can just see it in your eyes and your face, how you answered some of these questions already. And, we're not even asking the tough questions yet.
Please don't.
We will. You'll find that out.
Yeah, our boss is here, too.
Yeah, but Look, you know, sometimes good people, it might take them a little longer to win, but good people generally win. What's your DNA as a person, as an executive, as now a president? What is that about you that makes you as successful as you've been?
I probably don't know the actual answer to that. It's
is it a bad question, or
no? I think it's a question. I think it's a question better answered by others who know me. I don't know that I'll be able to tap into that, but I think what appeals to people is, and I'm hard to answer questions about myself, first of all. But I think if the people I'm around are doing well, if the people around me are achieving their goals and they're learning and they're just becoming the people they want to be, I think that's like, as an executive, as a friend, as a dad, I just pour myself into that. And so the staff that I've been around in Cleveland and Oklahoma City and LA, I very much want them to succeed in what it is they want to do, players included. And I very much believe that if you give people the resources, if you give them the blueprint if they want it, if you catch them when they're falling, if you pick them up after they've fallen, you give them the pat on the back. Like if you just create opportunity for people to pursue what it is they want, it's almost without choice that you're going to be surrounded by goodness and excellence, because it's rare that you come across the person that says, you know what, I sort of just want to be average.
Right.
Particularly in pro sport.
Right.
People
Nobody
want to be
really
excellent.
strives for that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Nobody, exactly. Well said. Nobody strives to be average.
Yeah.
And so to the extent that we can surround ourselves with people who want to actually pursue excellence and are willing to be vulnerable, accept help when it's offered, and fall 11 times and get up 12, I think we're going to be in good shape.
So,
like that?
Michael Winger is with us here on the Team 980. I'm going to be the contrarian here, and I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because desire-wise, sure, but there is a know-how to actually achieve excellence. That is the thing that is hard. Everyone wants to do well, to know what it actually takes to do well, and to be able to execute the things you have to do well is a different story. So the term operational development came up in a lot of interviews that I've read in the way that you think about putting this whole thing together. What is the importance of coming up with systems, procedures, operational development in an organization, and how do you do that well?
Well, I think it's a never-ending process. I don't think you get to a point and you look down and you say, okay, guys, we've perfected this. We no longer have to touch it anymore. You look around. Technology exists, and the tools on this desk right now, they're better today than they were 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, they were better than they were 20 years ago. And so it's just this relentless pursuit of being better, even just a little itty bitty tiny bit, being better tomorrow than we are today, being better today than we were yesterday, at whatever those things are. They could be procedurally, they could be systemically, they could be behaviorally, they could be all of the above. And to me, that is operational development. That's organizational development. It's making sure that everybody in the room, everybody in the building, they want to be better tomorrow than they were today. And they've identified that little itty-bitty tiny area where they can do it. If they just focus on that one area that day, they're probably going to be better. And then you get to the next day and you find the next thing, and the next day and you find the next thing. And over time, those processes become processes. And you didn't even intend for them to become processes. It's, whatever it is. It's make something up. If every third Thursday we get together as a group and we talk about something that is completely unrelated to basketball, right? Let's say we have a 1 hour talk on geology. I'm just making it up. People are going to somebody's going to appreciate that we had a conversation not about basketball, and then somebody else is going to strip something from that conversation on geology and apply it to basketball, and then that's going to germinate and become something new. And it's those new things. It's a commitment to those new things that I think create like that organizational momentum to be better. It's like, oh, I didn't even think about, diamonds or gemstones in basketball, but somehow we're going to create the link.
Chris, do you want to have a geology meeting, see if we can do better radio?
I was going to say, can we invite you over to the station, or can we come over here and hang out and have a little dinner, and we'll talk about geology, biology, whatever you want to talk about.
That's right.
We'll sit down and we'll break bread. Michael Winger, the new president of Monumental Basketball, with us, of course, here at District D after his introductory press conference. You've been on the job, for a couple of weeks now, officially, unofficially, what have you. I know you're not going to answer any specific question about what your plan is specifically, because you guys say that you haven't really had a chance to sit down. But let me ask it this way. You've been a part of championship teams. You've been a part of rebuilds. You've been a part of, making big splash trades and acquisitions, what have you, in all different stops. What's the best way to build a basketball roster in 2023?
I think it depends on where you are, and we're in Washington, D.C. I think it depends on who your ownership group is, and our ownership group is run by Ted. And so I think blending all three avenues of player acquisition is going to be the path that we take. That's free agency, that's trades, that's the draft. And we're going to figure out over time exactly how to balance the roster and where to get the players that we think are the players that are going to take us to where we want to be. We will not be terribly selective in where they come from. If there are players that deserve to be Wizards and there are players that want to be Wizards, we're going to pursue them. And it could be through the draft, it could be through trades, it could be through free agency.
Just let me ask a quick follow-up. You guys have stressed, and Will was with us, and there is no decision to be made on Bradley Beal. Everybody wants there to be a decision to be made. And you guys stressed during the press conference, no decision to be made on Kristaps and Kyle Kuzma because they have the decision.
Yep.
How do you balance that when again, you're in charge, it's now your name, you're shaping this vision, but you don't have total control of the situation in a lot of ways, and not just those three ways?
I mean, that's the NBA.
Yeah.
That's, I've been doing this, I don't even know how long, 18, 19 seasons. Nothing has changed in those 18, 19 seasons as it relates to player choice or team choice. But that's the nature of the system. Mm-hmm. It's a system whereby you have contracts and players have contracts. It's a system that has a draft. It's a system that has the ability to exchange players with other teams. And so, I mean, we're Will, myself, Trav, we're experts in the system. Mm-hmm. And we play it as it's designed.
You haven't met with Brad, and I know that's a huge, I don't know how you are ongoing meetings. I don't know if one of the ones you referenced in the press conference that you said, we have started that process. I don't know, maybe you have met with Brad, but you're obviously evaluating him as a man, and that's a huge part of this. But from a basketball standpoint, in terms of role and usage, what is the best fit for Bradley Beal on a NBA champion caliber basketball team?
I would answer that question if I had Brad sitting next to me, because I think he has more insight into that than I do. And I just think that he's been playing the game longer than I have. He's been a Wizard longer than I have. And I think that it would be uninformed for me to provide perspective on that, because Brad's the star and I'm not.
You had a quote in the Washington Post piece that I thought was very interesting. I'm sure some people will read into it, so I want to let you explain it, but also, kind of get what you meant at the core of it. You said sometimes change for the sake of change accelerates progress. What does that mean to you?
Oh, yeah. I did. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to suggest that we're going to detonate the roster.
Right.
I've had people shoot me texts and say, "What are you doing? Like, are you a moron?" You can't say that.
Well, I'm sure that, in many people's minds, the last two questions were related, which is why I wanted to ask, because I think it's a fascinating concept.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess to put it bluntly, the team as constituted hasn't performed.
Yeah.
Hasn't performed up to the level that they themselves probably wanted to perform. And running it back as constituted doesn't seem like a very wise pursuit. And so sometimes making that change accelerates the progress. There's a team in the finals right now that at its core doesn't look a lot different than it did a year ago and 2 years ago and 3 years ago, but they made a couple of tweaks in the off season, and now they're in the finals, up 2-1. So sometimes it's just those incremental changes that that can have pretty substantial results. And that's really what I meant.
Yeah, I have one more Brad adjacent question. And like Will said with us a few minutes ago, like there's no decision to be made, but like there is a decision there's decisions to make on every player. That's essentially also what you just said. And you have been through the process of trading a star player before you were very involved with the Blake Griffin trade. And those are really, really, really hard decisions because he is the star. He is the face of the franchise. And it's not just a basketball decision. So whether you ultimately decide to say, yes, we are going to trade him or not, I'm not trying to force you into the box of like, yes, this means we're going to trade him. Finally, an avenue to talk about it. What are the things that go into the decision to trade a player of that caliber generally that will amount to the process that you have of deciding on a Brad, a Kristaps, a Kyle, whether that is this summer or down the line?
Great question. I'll just stick to Brad specifically. When you get to a point in time when you, I guess in many cases, relent to deciding that we cannot win a championship as constituted. The last thing you ever want to do is trade away a player of that caliber, particularly if he's under contract, because you're not at risk of him leaving you.
Right.
It's incredibly hard to get players like that on your team. You know, every team every year wants a superstar. There's just not many of them, and so the last thing you want to do is move a guy for the sake of, just change. I mean, at his level.
Yeah.
But ultimately, why something like that ends up happening is because you've studied everything there is to study. You've pursued every scenario there is to pursue, and you've just come to the realization that, man, no matter what we do, we're just never going to get over this line. We're just never going to get over this particular hurdle, and your last resort is to move a guy of that level. And so anytime you see a guy like that traded, it's because the team and the player generally together have decided that we're just not going to win together. And so you team, for the sake of your future, why don't you move me somewhere else, and me for the sake of wanting to win, I'd like to go pursue this other opportunities somewhere else. And so it's almost invariably in pursuit of winning. But I mean, it's a last resort.
Yeah. And I will say, Chris, the one clip I saw of Michael before he was here was the season ticket holder event with the Clippers that you did with Rachel Nichols. There's a clip floating around somewhere on the internet where you talk about the Tobias Harris trade and how hard that was because of what he meant. And in that moment, I just went, this is the guy that if they have to have that conversation, he clearly gets it. And you started off this interview praising him and everything, but I in that moment went, I think that if I'm Ted Leonsis and I watch that clip, that's the kind of guy I want. So I appreciate that answer a lot.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get him to agree to let us sit down for an hour or so
right,
with
geology,
him, in
geology.
July to
Right.
discuss biology, geology.
Emeralds
And what are we
rubies,
having for dinner?
Granite.
Are we having anything good for dinner?
I haven't the darndest idea.
We can give you some good DC.
We like-
I don't even know
Look
if
at me, I
I'm
like
going to
food.
have dinner. I hope I have dinner.
Michael, you should have dinner.
I'm going to try to have
Okay.
We
dinner.
should have dinner. There's
Yeah,
some
have
good
dinner.
food over there. I haven't had a chance, but we're going to make our way over there. Thank you so much for doing
You got
this.
it, man.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it a lot.
And welcome to Washington,
Welcome.
D.C.
Thank you.
Appreciate
That is
you
Michael
guys.
Winger, the new president of Monumental Sports Basketball.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.